Thank you, Donna. Oh, Donna, are you going to be around during the break? By any
I
chance?
can be. Let's see, the break is at 10:30 to 10:45 Mountain, right?
Correct.
Sure, why not?
Okay, because all of a sudden there were a couple of questions for you, but we would like to get to the next presenter. So Keenan, if
Sure.
you to at the break.
Be happy to hang around and talk with folks.
Thank you. All right, so our next presenter today is Sage Joyce with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Montana Regulatory Office. Sage is the State Program Manager and Montana Section Chief of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Regulatory Program. She manages 3 offices and 8 project managers working within Montana. She received her BS in biology and started her career with the Army Corps of Engineers in 2010 as a student intern in Virginia, where she took on additional graduate courses in botany, hydrology, soils, GIS, and urban planning before transitioning to a full-time regulatory project manager. In 2015, she came back to Montana as a project manager in the Billings office and took her current role in Helena in 2019. She is originally from Kalispell, but left to serve in the U.S. Navy for 8 years and is glad to be back home. In her free time, she enjoys travel, camping, hiking, and a passion for cooking and doing crafty art projects with her daughter. So, Sage, thank you.
Hi, good morning. Okay,
So you can advance it
okay,
there.
point it to that.
Yep, and just point it to that.
Okay. All right, good morning. Good to see you all. I've recognized a lot of familiar faces, some I haven't met yet, and hopefully will by the end of the day.
Hold on.
Just 1 second. Okay. Steve said in his introduction, I am the section chief for Montana. I have a couple maps to show you how we're kind of broken down for the Army Corps of Engineers. And we do have 3 different offices, and we are finally, I'm very proud to say and very happy to say, up to our full staff load of 8 project managers. It's the first time since 2019 since I started and Todd left. So super happy about that. All right, so yep, the USACE regulatory program in Montana. Is it just the left one, right?
Yep.
Right.
So that should work.
Okay. So just gonna go quickly through who we are, what we do, why we do it, where we do it.
Okay, I'm gonna give
And
you this.
how. Okay, that's
clicker does better.
Okay. All right. Oops. Went back 1 too many. Yeah. All right, so we are broken down for Army Corps of Engineers, broken into divisions. We're part of the Northwestern Division, which is huge. It's enormous. It's one of the big, I think the biggest one. We cover a lot of different states, and each of those districts is part of the Northwestern Division. We are the Omaha regulatory branch. We have 6 different states, and then also field support. So we have about 30 to 40 PMs working projects all across those states, and we are trying to approach a more regional project management and regulators without borders. And so if you're working a project and all of a sudden you get somebody from Colorado as a project manager, that's why. So we've had a lot of people picking up projects from us, Nebraska, Colorado, even some from Alaska. Some random places we're picking up project managers the last couple of years. There we are. And our 3 offices in Montana, we don't have a great coverage geographically across the whole state, but we hit the pretty major areas where most of the projects happen. Just because a project happens in your Missoula office may not mean that the project manager in Missoula is working it. We share work across the state. So what we do, we permitting, jurisdictional determinants, compliance, enforcement, mitigation, banking, and outreach. All of that covers any of the, any of the waters of the US fall under all of those. So basic program jurisdiction, we have geographic jurisdiction, WOTUS, and activity-based jurisdiction. What work is being done in WOTUS? And so a lot of you may be familiar with all of this, but we kind of look through three different things: determinations, delineations, and verifications. Determination, yes, yes or no that there may be waters. Delineation is identifying where those waters are, and verification is yes, those are, we agree with what the delineation is. So as Donna went through, this has been the changes in WOTUS, just a quick timeline of 72 onto current. You can see from 2015 to now, we've had a lot of changes. And not only waters of the US rules, but different court cases, and then also our sister, 401 rules, going back and forth between those changes. So right now it's been, literally there may be a day that we are out in the field and something changes. I gave Jade a call. She was up on top of a mountain in Big Sky, and I said, do not make any calls right now because everything's changing. So kind of on the fly, we were, we're used to being very flexible and trying to interpret what we're, how our day-to-day goes. So current regime, I won't cover too deep in all these. These are, what Donna already went through a bunch of this stuff. But under the kind of the big changes were under tributaries. So the A5 waters, they natural, man-altered, or man-made, so ditches are still in, some of them, flow directly or indirectly into TNWs. And they can include river, streams, lakes, ponds, impoundments, ditches, canals, just depends. And that's why it's so tough right now, is because every site and every water is very case specific, and there are no generalities really, unless you're talking about the Yellowstone River, the Missouri River, the Kootenai. Those are about the only ones that haven't really changed. They are Section 10 waters, and they are pretty much always going to fall under the TNWs. So relatively permanent, as Donna said, also seasonally. It could be 3 months. It could be, if it's 2 months, but in response to snowpack melt, that could fall into it. It could be, that's been one of the tough ones to determine, because geographically, we have a huge state, and getting to see them is really hard. If you're up in Roosevelt County, it may take us a minute to get out there, go look at it and determine these to make a good jurisdictional call. Adjacent wetlands, continuous surface connection, abutting. Those are pretty easy to tell, but they shouldn't be separated by uplands, a berm, dike, similar barrier. But then we have had calls come back for the kind of one wetland concept, where it's considered one wetland and one portion of it may be severed by a road in between. So that's what also makes it tough, is they can be connected by a discrete feature, like a non-jurisdictional ditch, a swale, a pipe, culvert, and it's very clear that landowners cannot carve out those wetlands by separating them. So we currently under the joint coordination memo, working with EPA on determining jurisdiction. We have to send all of our A7 waters and other waters under A3 up through Region 8, potentially all the way up to headquarters. We have had a couple that have made it all the way there and been back and forth for several months to determine the jurisdiction or non-jurisdictional call. We really don't have any, unless it's a dryland AJD, the timeline is, there's no real set timeline to say it's going to take 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 2 days, a week. Pre-2015 regime, pre-SACIT, we did about 120 AJDs, 29 were found jurisdictional, 91 non-jurisdictional, 51 dryland, meaning no water whatsoever, nothing that even looked like a water on the property. 33 were isolated. Processing times range from 1 day for those dryland AJDs. You can clearly see it looks like a desert. To 403 days was the longest, and I don't remember which one that was, but it was likely due to need probably one of the larger ones and needing site visits in a remote place. Pre-2015 regime, post-Sackett, we've done one dryland AJD during that time where Sackett came out, all AJDs were paused. We were allowed to do dryland AJDs to September 8th. September 8th to now, we've completed 7. And all were determined non-jurisdictional. The processing times range from 1 day to 182 days. And as I said, often the delay is due to the growing season. So it's hard for us to get out there and confirm a delineation or look at a wetland or look at the connections of a wetland if it's under 2 feet of snow or frozen. Tools. So lots and lots of tools out there. Some, more current since I was a project manager, but they've got the, old standby delineation manuals, regional supplements. They have automated data sheets for them, the ordinary high watermark manuals, which they have data sheets for that now too. The APT, they have the latest version of that just came out. Stream flow duration assessment methods, they're in beta version for all 3 of those. And the field guide for upper extent of stream channels just came out recently. So you can get to all of those from the main headquarters website under the tools and resources webpage. But they're all, may not fit every situation, but they're good ones to refer back to for determining if these waters are connected, if they are waters, if they are wetlands. And getting into activity jurisdiction, of course, then once we determine it's waters of the US, we have 2 regulations we work under permit under. And mainly for Montana, it's a discharge or section 404, discharge of dredge or fill material. And so, talking about flow charts earlier, this is a very basic one that every project manager goes through in about 30 seconds in their head. It's, you can honestly, sometimes we skip from, discharge into WOTUS onto permit required. We don't necessarily have to go through a JD. If the activity is exempt, we'll process it through that direction. If it is something that fits the exemptions, farming or forestry roads, mining roads, normal farming practices, ditches, we'll go through that process, but typically we're ending up here. And honestly, a lot of times we just get pre-construction notification. People assume that the waters are jurisdictional and we just move forward into permitting because most folks, it's typically going to meet a regional permit or nationwide permit. Yep, we fall into one of many for streams up here, and then we are really the only ones who, at this time, currently regulate wetlands. But different types of permits that we have that cover activities in waters of the U.S. Went through the last 5 years and pulled out some of the top nationwide, like I said, nationwide permits are the bulk of the work that we do. A little under 2,300 in the last 5 years. Maintenance, huge one. Transportation, bank stabilization, aquatic restoration, that's another huge one. We see a ton of nationwide permit 27s, which is great. Got to see a lot of cool projects that way. And then the approved categorical exclusions, typically MDT, federal highways, seen some lately from Bureau of Reclamation. But then less than 100, but these are the other, ones that we see a lot of. Residential development is on the uptick. Utility lines, nationwide permit 12 has kind of gone through a change too. Now it's just oil and natural gas pipelines, so not so many. Previously, utility lines, that was, it covered all water, sewer, everything. Now that's got its own permit. So permitting, other actions, letters of permission just for typically dredging and navigable waters, Yellowstone, Missouri, in and around intakes. We see a lot of those, cleaning off boat ramps for FWP. Regional general permit, we had a moment where all of them were expired and we were working on revising them. We got our emergency RGP. not quite in time for the 22 floods, but it's now active and working, and we've issued quite a lot of them since it was issued last year. A lot of standard permits. A lot of them start out. We tend to, can usually get people mitigated down, avoided, minimized into a regional or a general permit. A lot of those are transportation, bank stabilization, development, ag-related were the ones that we did issue. Pre-app meetings, we love to do them. 1,500 of them in the last 5 years. It's great if projects are moving that direction, if there's complicated projects or large impacts. And then we do a lot of NPRs, a lot of no activity jurisdiction or exemptions. So here's some of our impacts for the last 5 years that we permitted. So temporary impacts, 59 acres. A lot of it's, nationwide permit 27. They'll go in and impact the wetlands, and then through restoration, it's, they'll have that ecological lift and, expansion or, raising better functioning wetlands. Transportation, of course, nationwide permit 12 is just excavation and refilling. Rivers and streams, 63 acres, nationwide permit 27, again, the big one. A lot of changing of moving wetlands to, reactivating stream channels. And then, thus expanding or extending the wetlands from it. So total permanent impact, again, transportation is our huge one. Nationwide permit 27 is another big one, and development. I can tell you, development's definitely on the rise. We're seeing a lot more of those, a lot more standard permits for development in and around the larger cities. So rivers and streams, another, we see a lot of them, a lot of permanent impacts for those 27s, again, for, the restoration of stream channels or modification of them to create riffle and pool habitats, things like that. But, we've done a pretty good job of minimizing impacts, even small amounts on each permit, adds up. Future development, programmatic initiatives, some that we're working on. We've been trying over the last couple of years to get the low-tech process-based restoration activities general permit. So this, I think, will be very valuable for the regulated community and a lot of watershed groups. And I know the Forest Service does a lot of these too, but PALs and BDAs. But we're trying to develop a self-verification checklist. Pre-concept on that, not sure exactly how well it's going to work, but it's going to be really tied to, we can get it down to not needing to have a full PCN. So folks will, as they're doing the project, they'll be able to go through, see that they meet the terms and conditions of the permit, and sign at the bottom of the checklist, yes, no, I will abide by these terms, and then they can go to work. They send that in to us and be a very quick turnaround. So these will all depend upon also our, fellow regulatory agencies and DEQs and, the tribes and EPA providing the water quality certs to go along with it. Then this one is a oldie that was in place many decades ago, but we're going to try and issue this one for certain types of project on Flathead Lake. We see an enormous amount of projects in and on Flathead Lake where they're very minor projects. A lot of them nationwide permit 3s, some bank stabilization, a lot of lately dynamic equilibrium beaches as opposed to hard bank stabilization projects. But same concept, this should lower our workload, facilitate the efforts of the conservation districts and CSPT on aquatic resources within their jurisdiction, kind of put it back into the local hands. But these are two that we're kind of working through right now. And then we also have another one on Missouri and Yellowstone rivers for dredging and other ag-related activities. So partnering with the Corps. Programmatic general permits. There are lots of states that have programmatic general permits where the state takes over at certain levels. Where I started with the Corps in Virginia, they have a state programmatic general permit where at half an acre, where the nationwide's, it kicks you out of the nationwide's, half an acre to 1 acre, the state took over the permitting program for wetlands and streams. And so then once it reached 1 acre, it came back to us and would be an individual permit. They can be great, kind of able to take the lower threshold impacts off of the course plate, put them in the state's hands where they can have a little more control on them. They do take some effort to get going and get developed, but advanced identification of disposal areas. This is one that I wasn't able to find anything recent on these, but I know back in the 80s, 90s, they were doing a lot of these with EPA. Evaluating wetlands in certain areas, identifying ones that are suitable for discharge and ones that people should be steered away from. So kind of identifying those higher quality resources that you have in those areas and making the, those would be an individual permit, higher mitigation thresholds, things like that. Special area management plans kind of feeds into the same thing. We do have one on the upper Yellowstone River. It does, eliminated the use of some of the nationwide permits, made those types of activities mandatory for individual permitting. But can just allows for an abbreviated process as opposed to going through a full standard permit. And also helps pre-identify those sensitive areas that are under that strong development pressure. But these are all ones that could be partnered locally, state, other agencies, watershed groups, entities. I think most of them are done, smaller geographic areas. I don't know of any of the stamps that necessarily cover like an entire state. So then on to other folks and what they could do, developing state or local programs to cover those aquatic resources that are no longer under our jurisdiction. Those that are isolated wetlands, the ephemeral streams, those ones that are clearly out of, or also adding additional protections to waters that are under our jurisdiction. So additional partnerships, landowner incentives to conserve or protect wetlands, voluntary restoration or protection, adopting other non-regulatory programs, which Montana's pretty great at. We've got a lot of watershed plans, a lot of wetland planning initiatives, outreach. It's huge, updating the outreach that's already out there. And then acquisition programs, bringing them into the local open lands for municipalities. And tomorrow everything could change. Kind of the way it's been the last couple of years. Executive orders, regulations, laws, the way we interpret them, it's all just been changing. Our headquarters has not been fabulous at putting out information to us down at the field level. And so often we don't quite know what's coming out, but when we do, we jump on it, we embrace it, and we try to learn the best we can, and so we can teach it forward. So it's very occasionally we even get stuff passed on to us, passed up to us from local folks, so, that come across something. I had somebody pass up a white paper that Norfolk District had been working on for years when I was there. Didn't realize they'd completed it, but got it in my hands through a consultant. So it's kind of interesting. So, but yeah, so this is how you can contact us. Best way is our general email box. We all have access to it. I've got a regulatory program assistant that's on it when he's in the office. He's also active or National Guard, so he's out quite a bit too. But 3 different offices, mailing addresses if somebody wants to send it snail mail. Regulatory request system. This is brand new, being pushed out. You can put in pre-apps, JDs, and report unauthorized activities now through it. And supposedly applications for permitting is coming maybe this year, maybe early next year. But be a way that we've been told you also be able to track the status of the project just from the website. So it'll be interesting to see how that all works out. But I think that didn't leave much for time for questions, but take any if anybody's got any.
We have about 5 minutes for questions if people have. Will you grab the mic? It's right next to you, or that one, and introduce yourself and who you're with. There's one right behind you.
Oh my gosh. Leave it to the technologically challenged person. My name is Tara and I work with CSKT. I was just curious if you had a timeline for the RGP 19.
So, no, where are we at with that? We're pre-talks with, 401. And the RGP itself is fairly well developed, but the checklist, the self-verification checklist is kind of our sticker, because it's a pretty big major move in a direction that we haven't ever been. And so, very excited about it, but it's going to take some working out and making sure that it meets with, basically that we can get the 401s approved, because if they're not approved, then we can't do the checklist and we'd have to make it a PCN. But, yeah, so we're hoping to get all three of the ones that we're working on right now out by the summer. It'd be great to be having people putting in their BDAs by this summer, but timelines and processes, it's holding us up a bit.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Mhm.
Are we looking at any sort of Montana stream quantification tool like Wyoming and Colorado?
So we have asked and been asking it honestly for several years. Our stream mitigation procedure is all we have, and that is very outdated. It's, it's implemented in 2013, was supposed to be updated every 3 years. It hasn't been updated since 2013. With all the bipartisan infrastructure law funding, we asked up through our division, our district and our division for funding and staff to help work this. And we did not make the cut because we already had something, and the states that didn't have anything made that cut. And so we're, the hope is now that we're fully staffed again, if we can get a handle on our permitting workload, then we can start working these long awaited initiatives that need that, at least a freshening up, if not, full overhaul. We have been in talks with different entities on some concepts and ideas. It's just nothing solid has been put to, pen to paper yet on it.
And please correct me if I'm wrong, but many of the members from the Wetland Council, some who are here today, helped develop and push that 2013 stream. And I'm sure there are many members as well who would be willing to help revise and test and things to work with the Corps.
And that is something that we would definitely push out and have, the kind of a community effort on trying to get that, because the state is so large and so big and so diverse in our aquatic resources that we need that. But yeah, I was gonna say, I thought I saw another hand.
Follow up on that. I noticed that you used acres for your temporary and permanent wetland quantification, but you also used that same unit for streams and rivers, which are linear features. And so, 145 acres of permanent stream and river impacts. What is that in terms of miles, which is how streams and rivers really are on the
Yes.
landscape?
Yeah. So the 2021 nationwide permits, the Corps headquarters moved from looking at mitigation thresholds for streams in linear feet to acreage. And we had always had 300 linear feet as kind of our benchmark for the needing to look at stream mitigation. The 2021 nationwide's put that at 3/100 of an acre. So if, in terms of 300 linear feet, that's about a 4.5 foot extension into the river. That's what's hard about throwing information out there like that is because of the headquarters push to that since 2021, everything is annotated or entered into our database in acres. And so pulling it out into linear feet is super tough because we also had a crossover. So a lot of that is I can tell you just on as, non-data backed, information, we see a lot, most of our stream impacts are, bank stabilization. And so it is following the linear footage of we look at it linear feet along the stream. Most of them are following still under that 300 linear feet, and because that is still the driver for mitigation. And that, in a lot of places does drive the price, of the whole project. You'll almost double it if stream mitigation is involved. And so, we do a tremendous amount of bank stabilization, whether it's just protecting individual properties, houses, homes, transportation, roads, bridges. And so a lot of and then also with the nationwide permit 27, it'll count it as a stream impact if it's being changed to wetlands, even though then it might be moved. So it's just kind of it's kind of oddly in our database. And so, but there's also, we don't count it as a permanent loss of water, even though it may be a permanent impact. And so the stream does still flow adjacent to that riprap or the, bioengineered bank stabilization. It just may encroach into it. And so therefore it's counted as that acreage based. I don't know if that answered your question. Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah, and it's, that impact, the real driving impact is locking that stream in its position with the bank stabilization. And, usually the desire is because there is infrastructure right up against that stream. And so, that's a permanent impact to that stream, but it may not be a permanent loss of waters because the stream is still there and flowing. I know it's a really wonky way to look at it, but